तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ। ज्ञानयोगेन साङ्ख्यानां कर्मयोगेन योगिनाम्। न कर्मणामनारम्भात् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते। न च सन्न्यस्तनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति। न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि साधु तिष्ठत्य कर्मकृत्। कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वप्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः। कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य यासे मनसा स्मरन्। इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः उच्यते। यस्येन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन। कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम् असक्तस्वविशिष्यते। नियतं कुरु कर्मत्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः। शरीरयात्रापि च ते न प्रसिद्ध्येत कर्मणः। यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणो यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः। तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर। सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्टा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः। अनेन प्रसविष्यत्वम् एष वोत्तिष्ठ कामधुक्।
The vasanas propel the action, and the quality of the action will be dependent upon the proportion of the gunas. Are you able to hear? I am not, my ears are gone, I am not able to hear. Very difficult when you can't hear what you are talking. Get vechirukka. Alla get vechirukka. Okay. Vasanas drive the action. The type of activity will depend on the qualities, depending on the proportion of the gunas. A predominantly sattvic, a predominantly rajasic, a predominantly tamasic. The vasana for music will drive the action into music. How he will perform that action will depend on the gunas. That's where we ended last week. Vasana for sports will drive the action into the field of activity of sports. The gunas determine how it will be done. So he says, all are made to act helplessly by the gunas born of nature. the three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. Tamas is a tendency to avoid action, an inclination, always looking forward to avoid action. Rajas is a state of action, but action done with a lot of disturbances. Sattva is a state of action with equanimity. Since the combination of the gunas determine the quality of the action, it's very important to understand what is the predominant guna that is driving the action. A tamasic person also can perform shades of sattvic action sometimes because of the sattva guna in him that is manifest. A rajasic person also does it. Completely different is when it comes to the state of sattva. Completely different when it comes to the state of sattva, because the predominant itself makes a human being. Thus, the predominance of sattva is such that in all spheres that sattva will manifest. That's the very nature of sattva guna itself. In other words, you can never find a sattvic person doing something very tamasic in nature. That's not possible. A tamasic person can sometimes do something very sattvic because of the sattva guna. A predominantly sattvic person, you can never find him doing anything grossly tamasic in nature, because the predominance of sattva itself means that tamas is eliminated. The predominance of sattva itself means that tamas is eliminated. Therefore, in him you find everything has the same flavor of sattva guna. He slipped in the word avashaha. Avashaha means helplessly. Looks as though a human being is helpless. The helplessness is the intensity of the vasanas, the intensity of the desires will drive a person into action. Whatsoever be the quality of action. A predominantly tamasic person will be acting in a tamasic way. This is what we have discussed already. Whenever tamas is spoken as inaction, don't understand it as zero action. Inaction is not zero action. Inaction is not no action. Inaction is a state of inaction is useless action. Action that is of no use to the action that does no good to the doer. In that sense it is inaction. Otherwise, tamas means zero action. That's where in the previous sentence he says, zero action is an impossibility. None can remain inactive even for a split second means he has ruled out the possibility of zero action. Zero action is an impossibility. That he has already said. Having said zero action is impossible, then what is tamas? Inaction. Inaction is also a kind of action. Like a person lazing around in the bed, not willing to get up from the bed is also a kind of action, but for all practical purposes it is known as inaction. You follow? In that sense it is tamas. All are made to act helplessly. All are made to act helplessly means the vasanas drive itself into action. The gunas mix themselves up and proportion happens accordingly. The gunas mix themselves and the quality of action that comes out of the human being will be in line with the mixture. Will be in line with the mixture that he has. Helplessly is to indicate that you can't forcefully abstain from action. Don't forget the background. Arjuna wants to forcefully abstain himself from action. So he is only trying to indicate that aspect of it. What is that aspect? Arjuna wants to forcefully abstain from action, and Krishna is saying you can't forcefully abstain from action. For you will be made to act. All that he is saying is very simple. If he has run away from the battlefield, 3 weeks later he will make a plan for another battle. That's what it means. Vasanas will function helplessly. He can run away today, but 3 weeks later he will make a plan for another war, or somewhere he will be fighting only. He can't stay. That Vasana will not allow him to take. All that he is saying is you will be made to act helplessly. Therefore, forget this idea of abstaining from action. Forget this idea of abstaining from action, for you will be forced into action. The human nature drives the human being into action. The very Rajoguna drives the human being into action. And that very Rajoguna driving the action makes the action so painful, so stressful. The only way to avoid the stress is, the only way to avoid the action is quickly finish the action and get back. That's where you find in every human being, or in most, and I say every means predominantly most, there is always an urgency to quickly finish the action. Why? Tell the person, no, you have to keep doing the same thing again and again. Don't think of stopping the action. He says, we need something different. The variety will keep the interest alive for a while. But nevertheless, the attitude remains he said, what is attitude? The attitude to quickly we should sit quietly the rest of the day. The attitude is to quickly end the action, meaning to quickly get into the state of inaction. Why? Action has become very stressful, painful. Therefore, Arjuna, don't try to escape from action. For you will try to escape today. 3 days later you will start planning for another battle. Even if you are not planning for another battle, wherever you are, you will start fighting with. For the nature is to fight. Therefore, it will manifest helplessly. Trying to abstain from action in the way that you are trying, Arjuna, will not help you. Is it okay? The gunas? always understand it like this, it becomes easy. A tamasic person can sometimes do a very sattvic action because the flavor of sattva is there. Sometimes it manifests. A sattvic person will never do. A sattvic person will never do anything grossly tamasic in nature because the tamas itself is eliminated. That's where you can never find a sattvic person doing something lower. Or if you find a sattvic person doing something grossly tamasic in nature, in the first place he is not sattvic. He is just putting up he has just put on a robe of being sattvic in nature. In reality he is not. That's where the oscillations. Most of the oscillation happens from the tamas to rajas. Rajas to tamas. Because of the very pain itself. A person gets into action and the doing itself is so painful, instead of gaining the right knowledge and becoming sattvic, he will go back into the tamasic state. And then he can't stay in the tamas for a long period of time. And that very tamas itself will wake him up into rajas for a short period. Again from the same rajas he falls back into. Since you find the majority of the people belonging to this category, you see the oscillations. Completely different is in the case of a sattvic person. Is it okay? Yes. How does one find out whether rajas is predominant or tamas is predominant? It's very easy to find out. Tamas is predominant when the thought of doing itself is so painful. To avoid the pain, stop the action. That's the state of tamas. That's very easy to understand, at least theoretically. And you can see it very clearly in others, but not in. Yeah, that is very difficult. To see it in oneself is very difficult. Tamas is an attitude to avoid. Tamas is an attitude to avoid action. Carefully follow. He is talking about, that's where I said last class also, every week I am saying the same thing. He is talking about action, he is talking about action to a person who is, he is a person, he is talking to a skillful person, he is not talking to an illiterate. See, primarily, who you should talk about inaction to? You should talk about inaction to a lazy person. You don't talk about inaction to a person who is already a type of Arjuna, who is the highest category of, at least from outside it looks like that. Therefore, what do you understand from this? Arjuna, even though he is a skillful person, even though he has acquired a skill, the proportion of gunas has got nothing to do with the skill. That's why a skillful man like Arjuna also wants to run away from action. Therefore, what do you understand from this? A person wants to avoid action. In what field of activity he will want to avoid action? That's where the knowledge of Gita is very relevant. That's where we say it is applicable at all periods of time. In a field where he has spent a lot of time acquiring that skill, acquiring that expertise, acquiring that knowledge, in that field of activity, he will want to avoid action. You have to understand it like that. Then only the third chapter and fourth chapter will make some sense. Never forget Arjuna. For if you miss Arjuna, you miss the Gita. Otherwise you will be generalizing it. Are you able to follow? So he is talking about action to a person who is a skillful person. So what is the possibility there? What is the possibility there? The possibility is what is predominant even today. A skillful man wants to, like he goes on saying in the lectures, he goes on talking, no? At the age of 40, 45, the man wants to retire. It's not an inactive person. He has been acquiring that. How long it takes to acquire that skill? In an average, for a human being to acquire a skill, how long it takes? 20 years it takes. If you start from kindergarten to up to masters, bachelor's is also not enough. Minimum you need is a master's degree. By the time you finish the masters, you would have spent almost 22 years. Minimum I am talking about. 22 years of acquiring a skill, so that when you get into action will be actions. That's the hope. Actions will be efficient. Action will be less stressful. With all this hope, the human being goes into this. Only to realize what? Only to realize the next morning when he wakes up, the thought of doing is stressful. If you are forced to act in a different field of activity, stress is understandable. How can he find stress in the field of activity in which he is an expert already? He is an expert already. Arjuna is very skillful in that field already. It's not the first time he is getting into the warfare. And he is a veteran of how many battles he has won before. You follow? Therefore, it's easy to identify tamas. How? In your field of activity, the thought of doing it is painful. Na? That is tamasic. How does one identify Rajoguna? Tamas is wanting to slip into avoiding that action. Why it is called Tamoguna is because, carefully follow, when you avoid the doing, it's not that you are staying still, you are doing something else. And that something else will be useless in nature all the time. That's why the tamasic state will be an attraction to indulgences. A natural attraction to indulgences. Are you able to follow? It's not that the person stops doing that action and starts meditating and realizing the self. He will be replacing it with indulgent actions. Are you able to follow? This is how you identify the tamoguna. Rajoguna is you will not think about avoid doing. There will be a feverishness in doing, or you will experience a pain and burden while doing. Tamoguna is dropping it itself. Rajoguna is carrying the burden. At some point of time, the burden becomes too much. You want to offload it. That's tamas. So fundamentally, action is a burden. Either you have a choice to continue carry that burden. That's the state of Rajoguna. The state of Tamoguna is temporarily wanting to offload the burden. What is the state of Sattva Guna? The state of Sattva Guna is the right understanding behind action. What is the right understanding behind action? Every action is seen as an opportunity to eliminate the desire and going one step closer to the self. Every action is an opportunity to eliminate the desire, and it's taking you one step closer to the self. With this understanding, the human being will want to die doing action, but he will not avoid. Action is the same. It's the guna that changes the complexion behind the action. Are you able to follow? Sattva Guna, in the state of Sattva Guna, the person has the right understanding. What is the right understanding behind action? Likes and dislikes can be eliminated only by performing action. You cannot, there is no other way. Therefore, every action, he is grateful doing it. He is blissful doing it. He is joyful doing it. Why? Because it's taking him closer to the self. Therefore, you will find a sattvic person never fatigued or tired or complaining about action. Carefully follow. Whenever we talk about fatigue, we talk about mental fatigue. We don't talk about physical fatigue. For physical fatigue is very easy. You go to sleep for a couple of hours, you will wake up fresh. Therefore, fatigue is never whenever we talk about fatigue, we always talk about fatigue at the mental level. Not if you are physically fatigued, nature will take over. How nature will take over? It will drive you to sleep. You will wake up fresh and you are into action again. So, as a sattvic person having this right knowledge will never complain about fatigue, tiredness, or doing action. Neither he will be worried about the result of the action. For the result that he is working for is entirely different. What is the result that he is working for? He is using desires, he is using action to eliminate desires. That's what he is going to say later. Yajna karma is that action. Only yajna karma has this potential. Only in yajna karma you have this capacity. You can achieve this. Follow? This is how you understand Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. Yes. Rajas is fatigue. That's fatigue. Fatigue means, what is fatigue? The thought of doing it. Just the thought of You have to, supposing, simple example. Sunday, supposing I wake up in the morning and I see, oh my God, Sunday today. Oh, in the class, back to back. Nothing is happening externally, nothing is happening internally. On top of it, there is a cold, there is a fever, there is a stomach upset. All these are enough reasons just to send a WhatsApp message to Venkat saying what? Nikki? Just the thought of doing it. Another thing can be, no, if I don't go, what will happen to everyone? That can drive the action. As though the whole lot is dependent on me and this classroom. Even though it is fully understood that no one is dependent on, who is dependent on this? Do you follow? Or it can be, having decided to do, you go, at the most what will happen, your throat will get choked in say sorry and leave. Nothing will. What attitude brings you into the thought of doing it? Don't worry about the doing part. It's not the doing part. It is that attitude that drives the doing. It's attitude that drives the doing. Rajas is fatigue. The thought of doing it itself can be tiresome. Tamas is wanting to avoid the very doing itself. That's why I said in a very loose way. Rajas means it's a burden, but somehow you carry the burden. Tamas is simply avoid. Action, if you better is don't take up any action. Sattva is the state where doing is seen as an opportunity to self-purification. Action is an opportunity for evolution, self-purification. When it is understood, when actions are understood like this, what will prevent a person from acting? He will never complain about fatigue. He will never complain about tiredness. He will never want to stop doing. That's a state of Sattva Guna. What is known as transactive. Transactive doesn't mean he has transcended action. He has transcended the pain and the fatigue behind the action. Okay. Verse number 6 padi.
Nityacharasramuchyate karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma nityacharasramuchyate.
He who restraining the organs of action sits mentally indulging in the sense objects. He of deluded understanding is called a hypocrite. Is continuing the thought frequency, the thought flow of forcefully avoiding action. A person can forcefully abstain from action at the physical level. But what he will be doing helplessly, that's what he has already said in the previous verse. What is that helplessness is so difficult to understand, he is making it much more He's making it very clear here. What is that helplessness? Desires will force you into action. But what is possible in a human being? What is possible in a human being? He can forcefully abstain from doing that action. At the level of the body, at the level of the senses, he can abstain. But what will happen helplessly? That's the helplessness. What will happen helplessly? He will be sitting mentally indulging. He of deluded understanding is called a hypocrite. Hypocrisy is the thought is saying something, the deed is saying something. That is hypocrisy. Impersonating. That's all hypocrisy is. What is hypocrisy? Hypocrisy is projecting oneself as someone who he is not actually. That's hypocrisy. A person can dress like Buddha, walk like Buddha, talk like Buddha, can sit in the meditative posture that Buddha is sitting, find his breakfast, lunch and dinner menu and follow and he can follow the same menu. From outside he looks like Buddha. But inside exactly the opposite. Hypocrisy means acting, that's all. Hypocrisy is nothing but, hypocrisy is what, in a very simplest way, to put it in a very, very crude way, what is hypocrisy? Putting up an act. Imagine the situation. In the Ramayana, Ravana has abducted, Ravana has taken away Sita. And Rama is crying. He is going from, you know that scene, no? After Rama comes back and sees Sita is taken away, he goes, he is very disturbed. No husband will be disturbed the way that Rama was disturbed because of the loss of Sita. He goes to the trees and talks. He catches hold of the deer and talks. Where is Sita? Where is Sita? Where is Sita? To an extent where Lakshmana has to say, wait, why are you getting so? We have to find out. Now, there are thousands of actors who have done the scene. There are thousands of actors who have done the scene. From outside, they may look better than, they may act better than Rama himself. Why? Rama didn't have any opportunity to do rehearsal. In the case of others, they can go on, training to put an act. That is hypocrisy. That's all. Train oneself to put up an act. That is called hypocrisy. Last thing about hypocrisy is this. The person who is hypocritical, he alone believes that he has convinced the others. When everyone around him knows very well that this man is correct, no? That's why you find நல்ல ஆக்ட் கொடுத்தாருப்பா, நான் கூட இது தெரியாத மாதிரி. The worst aspect of hypocrisy is this: only that man believes that he has convinced everyone around him, whereas all others around him knows very clearly what that fellow is putting up an act, and they also keep quiet for various. Now why they keep quiet, the reasons will vary, but nevertheless it is so obvious this hypocrisy is. Arjuna, don't get into this hypocrisy. Why? If you run away from battle because of the reasons that you gave in chapter 1, everyone around you will see how hypocritical you are. Are you able to follow what he is saying? All that he is telling is, every verse try and bring him in, you will understand the relevance of it. All that he is telling Arjuna is, Arjuna, if you run away from doing this action, now everyone around you will understand how hypocritical you are, how everyone knows him, how everyone will understand. For Arjuna only had started to believe that he has turned into a very different person. If you can remember the arguments that you gave in chapter 1, except only he is believing that he is a changed person, whereas fundamentally he is still the same. Therefore, Arjuna, if you run away, everyone around you will understand that you are a hypocrite. And foolishly you think. That's where from chapter 2 he is maintaining that. Prajnavadamscha bhashase. You spoke like a wise man, Arjuna. Now what does it mean? You are not wise. For if you are wise, you would have started the battle already. For what difference does it make? The very fact that you are not doing the action and coming up with reasons to avoid the actions means you belong to the clear category of Mityachara. Mityachara means Mithya Achara. Achara means discipline. Achara means discipline. Mithya means false. Therefore, who is a Mityachara? A person who is putting up an act of false discipline. Meaning, in himself he is indulgent, but outside he projects himself as completely different from what he is inside. What will happen to such a person? Very soon the true colors will get revealed. For you can't be hypocritical for a long period of time. Your true nature will reveal itself, and when it reveals itself, it looks very ugly to whom? To that person. For others have already understood that he is. Don't forget, don't say ugly for others. He'll feel so, how foolish I was to have been acting like this for so long. That's why he says, he is of deluded understanding. He is of deluded understanding. Deluded understanding is simply saying no understanding. Achara means discipline. Mithya means false. So mithyachara is a person who is putting up an act of a false front. A false front. In English it is translated as hypocrite. That's how in English it gets translated as hypocrite. Thoughts and desires happens inside of you. Actions is what expresses out of you. Others have no access to your thoughts and desires. Others have access to your actions. Therefore, you can train yourself to do a particular type of action and make the other believe that you are completely different from what you are inside. This is hypocrisy. That's why hypocrisy will be revealed in front of a wise man who has this penetrating capacity. You go and stand in front of a wise man, he is penetrating, he says, don't put up an act of, don't be hypocritical. It will be exposed. It gets exposed very soon. Therefore, what does deluded understanding means? When a human being is material and sensual, wanting to put up an image of being spiritual. By nature he is material and sensual, but wants to put up an act of being spiritual. This double standards is called hypocrisy. They are called as Vimoodatma. Mooda, grades of foolishness. There are grades of foolishness. Mooda, Pramuda and Vimuda. Vimuda is the highest. Grades of foolishness they have discussed. Now on what basis they arrived at these, I don't know. There are three words. Mooda means fool. And then there is another category called Pramuda. Slightly well trained in foolishness. Finally, the highest category is Vimuda. He has reached the peak of foolishness, beyond which nothing exists, beyond which nothing is possible. What is that state? Hypocrisy is that state, where he himself believes the front that he is putting. Knowledge says, okay, you throw dust into the eyes of others, it's understandable. But if you throw dust onto your own eyes, what can be done to that person? What can be done? Nothing can be done. If you are wise, you will run away from, you will not want to associate with such. Why? Why? For you will also start picking it up. Vimoodatma is an indication of your true potential. Whenever the Shastra says, fool, it's not to insult, it's not to demean, it's to say that what is your true potential and what have you compromised for? What is it that you can actually get and what is it that you have compromised for? This gap is what is known as foolishness, deluded understanding. A human being has the potential relatively closest to the divine is who has the potential to get closer to the divine, or who can actually become divine? The human being. For only the human being has the potential to eliminate the desires and get back to self. No other creature can do that. Only a human being has this potential. What is the potential? To eliminate the desires and get back to the self. If you have neglected this opportunity, what you will be called as? The Shastra says, the wise man says, you are a fool. You will not go to a dog and say you are a fool. You will not go to the lion and say you are a fool. But when you see a human being, you say you are a fool. Why? For what he can achieve through action and what he is trying to get through action. That gap. What he can achieve through action, achieve the highest. Instead of that, what is he doing? Compromised for something lower. That's why he is known as the fool. It's exactly like this. The Upanishad gives the story. A traveler wakes up in the early hours and comes to the river bank, waits for the sun to come so that he can have a bath. The sun has not yet risen. So what he does, he sits there. He gets bored. So what he does, he starts throwing pebbles, one after the other. They do that, no? You take one pebble and throw it in the dome. There. He starts throwing. One after the other, he starts throwing. So he found a few pebbles. As he took the last pebble and he threw it, the sun came and he saw what was going inside the river. Diamonds. Fellow didn't have the right knowledge, didn't have the right understanding. So he threw the valuable and taken up the useless. What is the valuable? Self-realization is the valuable. Self-purification is the valuable. That is thrown away for what? For something material, something sensual. How can you not call that person as a fool? Actually, instead of calling fool, you should make them all stand in a line and you have to shoot them all. Not only they say you are a fool, they also give a technique of how to get back. They don't simply say you are a fool and go away. They stay, they sit, and they have given very many techniques to help you to get back to the state of. Since they are doing that, they take the privilege to call you a fool. They take that privilege to call you a fool because they are not just saying you are a fool and running. No, they are willing to run that marathon with you. See, carefully understand. Helping another is running a marathon. extraordinary energy, extraordinary strength, extraordinary affection is required to run a marathon. You follow? Since they are willing to do that, they take the privilege and say, you are a fool. People get affected saying, oh, he is very insulting. Why is he insulting? Not to insult you. He is insulting you because he loves you so much. The very affection itself is bringing in this insult. If you understand it like that, then you will be grateful. If you understand it like that, then you will be grateful. If you don't understand it like that, then you will feel, oh, these people are all very arrogant. They think they know everything. One person read this Ramatirtha's volume 1 and came and said, sir, what Ramatirtha talks about, what he is lecturing and talking and all is very, very fine. But he is arrogant also, no? Why? Rama says so. Rama says so. I am saying. And why he is too? What can you talk? That person. Colossal. That's what he said. Vimud Atma. Failure to live up to the potential of reaching the highest. Remember the example that he gives? A person who has lost in the wild card entry level itself, Wimbledon. What will you tell that person? Better luck next time. A fellow has won the semi-final and reached the final, and he is so happy that he has reached the final. He is partying the whole night. Next day when he comes to the center court, instead of seeing one ball, he is seeing two balls. Now what will you call that man? That's all he is saying. That's all he is. Having come to that height, why do you miss it? Why do you miss it? For you are not willing to step up and come to the next level. Having come to this level, you are not willing to. Having come to this level itself has brought about a sense of a relaxation, where you feel enough. Whereas Vimudatma is an indication that you can't relax till you reach the highest. You are called as a hypocrite. 7 padi.
Yasindriyati manasa niyam jarapatirjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta vishishyate. Yasindriyani manasa niyam jarapatirjuna karmendriyai karma yogam.
But he who restraining the senses by the mind, Arjuna, engages his organs of action in the yoga of action without attachment, he excels. He is introducing the concept of karma yoga. He is slowly introducing he is just using the word karma yoga first. What is karma yoga? Restraining the senses by the mind. Engages his organs of action in the yoga of action. How he does it? Without attachment, he excels. He is introducing what is known as the middle path. He is introducing what is known as the middle path. Middle path says, engages your organs of action in the yoga of action, but mentally do not restrain the senses by the mind. Okay. What is opposite of middle path? The path of extremes. Either extreme indulgence or extreme abstinence. The nature of the mind is to move into extremes. Naturally, the mind will go into extremes. Very difficult is to restrain, very difficult is to stick to what is known as the middle path. It's very simple. If you go on overeating, the very overeating itself will drive you to the other extreme of fasting. It's not that you have understood anything. From one extreme, the mind will naturally go to the other extreme. For the mind works like the pendulum. When the pendulum is moving to the right, it's not only moving to the right, it's gathering enough momentum to go to the left. That's the path of extremities. Again I repeat, when the pendulum is moving to the right, it's not only moving to the right, it's gathering enough momentum to go to the left. When it is going to the left, it's gathering enough momentum to come to the right. So from this what do you understand? The human beings, the mind naturally follows the path of extremities. For one extreme will create the conducive environment for the other extreme. Following one will create the conducive environment for the other extreme. So naturally it will go there. When it is there, it will naturally comes back to the other. In this extremities is the fertile ground for the desires to increase. Desires goes on increasing, desires goes on multiplying when the mind is moving in extremes, opposites. To tell a person, transcend the desires, a person who is a victim of desire, to tell him directly transcend the desires has no meaning. You can tell him, but it will not help him. So what he says, he starts the helping process. How does one do that? First thing, he says, engage yourself in action. Engage yourself in action means he is giving a kind of license to contact. He says, first thing, contact. Don't try to abstain. For if you try to abstain, he has already said it. You become a hypocrite. Okay. Then go fully into it. Huh? No. Again, either way, this is the path of extremes. Are you able to understand now? One way is avoid the contact itself. Here action means contact. One set is to say, avoid the contact itself. That's what Arjuna wants to do. There problem. Simply run away. So problems are solved. He says, no. You are going to the other extreme. Nothing will help. What is the other thing then? Then be here and contact and indulge. Is that what he is saying? No. That's also not he saying. How do you understand that? Restraining the senses by the mind. So when he says restraining the senses by the mind, he is giving that possibility. The possibility of contact but not indulging. That's middle path. So, restraining the senses by the mind engages the organs of action. Means, he's saying, contact, but avoid. Contact is allowed, but indulgence is detrimental. For the problem starts with the indulgence, not with the contact. If by not contacting, if all problems can be solved, very easy. Dullen all the senses. When all the senses are dullened, no contact is possible, then the human being should have become evolved. If Surdas has known this, he would not have plucked his eyes unnecessarily. He plucked his, you know the story, no? He plucked his eyes. He became blind. Not that he was born blind. As he was walking in the streets, he saw the beautiful lady. He saw the beautiful lady crossing. As she crossed, he turned back to look at her again. That evening he thought, water, kann irukradhanaal dhaan a problem. Remove the eyes. Later on he writes. How do you know all that is? He has written about all this. Later on he writes, unnecessarily I plucked my eyes. For by avoiding it, nothing is going to happen. Does it mean be in contact and indulge? What is the middle path here? First thing is the contact is allowed. For as long as you are alive, you will be in contact. It's not that allowing means, it's not someone is allowing you to contact. As long as you are alive, understand it in a much deeper sense. Then you will understand how beautiful is this idea of middle path. As long as you are alive, the senses stimuli will be entering as long as the senses are alive. And responses will be going back as long as the senses are alive. Meaning, as long as you are alive, these two will keep happening most constantly. And you don't have to do anything about it. All that you have to do is what? First thing, contact is alright, but what should not happen? When the mind starts indulging. What is indulgence? When the senses are not contacting, mind imagining that contact is indulgence. Again I repeat, what is the definition of indulgence? The senses are not contacting it, but the mind is dreaming about it. The mind is imagining it. It's cerebral. This is what is known as indulgence. This creates more and more vasanas. This creates more and more desires. And how do you get into this indulgence itself? The starting point of indulgence. The starting point of indulgence is action. Because you are in contact is an action. And what the mind does? The mind picks it up and starts. The mind picks it up and starts imagining the contact and deriving a pleasure out of it. Wow. How nice it was. How nice it will be. The mind goes into that. The mind starts imagining. When you start imagining, this is how the desires increase. When you start imagining, what happens? The senses has a limited capacity to experience joy. Indulgence makes the mind to go behind the indulgence. The mind drives the senses to contact again and again and again, by which it loses its capacity to enjoy. And what is the only way? Sit and mentally relive. Sit and mentally linger. Again I repeat, it's not difficult at all to understand. The senses has a limited capacity to enjoy, number one. And that limited capacity to enjoy is there only when the contact is regulated. The example that he gives is, first mango, joyful. Second mango, continuously, not every year, but continuously. The third mango, fourth mango, you feel like screaming and saying, Theriyama solta, I like mango, leave me alone. The fifth one is nauseating. For senses has a limited capacity. Discipline is nothing but understanding this limited capacity of the senses and regulating the contact accordingly. That's what discipline is. Discipline is, again I repeat, discipline is recognizing the limited capacity of the senses, thereby regulating it. Because of the indulgence, because of the mind having this exaggerated notion about joy, how much ever you contact, the mind doesn't, there is no experience of joy at all. Why? First thing is, the senses have become dull. The second thing is, forced to contact after it has lost its capacity. By this way, Arjuna, you increase your desires. Conversely, follow what is known as the middle path. To go into the full understanding of the middle path, there is one whole chapter in the book Holocaust of Attachment. There is one whole chapter where middle path is discussed at 6 levels: at the material, at the senses, at the level of action, at the level of emotion, at all levels. How one can practice middle path is discussed in detail in the text Holocaust of. There is one whole chapter known as middle path. Refer that also. Read that chapter and then come back to this verse. It becomes, you will understand it will be much easier to follow what he is saying in this verse. Follow? Middle path. But nevertheless, to put it very simply here, in this context, what is middle path? Avoiding the path of extremes. One man runs behind the money, thinking that money is going to save him, protect him. Another man runs away from money, thinking that money is going to harm him, destroy him. Krishna says, both are wrong. Krishna says, both are wrong. What is middle path? Be in it and understand what it can give and what it cannot give. Then you are following middle path. You follow? It becomes easy to understand if you start giving examples to your own. One man runs away from money, thinking that Shastras have said, Artham Anartham Bhavaya Nityam. Therefore, don't touch wealth. One man runs away from money thinking that money is going to destroy him. Another man chases money thinking that wealth is going to protect him. What is middle path? Middle path is the right understanding of what wealth can give and what wealth cannot give. Do you follow? With wealth, you can hire a person, but you understand with wealth, you cannot hire sincerity. So you understand what wealth can give and what wealth cannot give. This is middle path. Therefore, you don't have an exaggerated value for money. You have placed the right value. Since you have placed the right value, you know how to deal with it correctly. Then you are on the right path. You follow? Again, I repeat the same example. You understand what wealth can give and what wealth cannot give. With wealth, you can hire a person. Easy to hire a person by wealth. You say, okay, 5,000 rupees. You are hired. But what you can't hire? So you understand, you have only hired the person, but you have not hired. So you will not expect. You will not complain. Oh, that person is less. For you have not hired that. For it cannot be. For you understand. Through wealth you can't hire sincerity. You follow? This is known as the middle path. With wealth you can buy an exercise machine, but in order to acquire health, you have to actually work on that machine. So if you actually want health, even if you don't have that machine, you can still be healthy. Na? You understand the role of what money can do, what wealth can do and what wealth cannot do. Therefore, you will neither chase it unnecessarily, nor you will avoid it unnecessarily. This state of equanimity is required. This is what is known as the state of equanimity. Are you able to follow? Very difficult is to explain what this equanimity is. What is the state of equanimity? An understanding in relation to what wealth can offer and what wealth cannot offer, as a result of which you don't run away from it, neither do you unnecessarily waste your time chasing it and hoarding it. There you are following the middle path. He excels, he says. Sa visishyate. He excels. Whoever practices this formula of middle path, he excels. What is excellence? What is excellence? As you are doing that which ought to be done, you are reaching the ultimate of self-realization also. In that way it is. In that way he excels. What is excellence again? As he is doing that which ought to be done, he reaches the ultimate. What's the ultimate? The goal of self-realization. He introduces Karma Yoga, the middle path. What does middle path says? An understanding of what it can offer and what it cannot offer. If you understand it both, what it can offer and what it cannot offer, you have developed the right understanding. Seriya? We continue next week with the middle path.